Modern hustle culture operates on a very simple equation. You are your output. We obsess over achievement, aggressively optimizing our routines, and measure our worth by what we can personally produce in a 24-hour window. This creates a psychological framework known as doership. It is the deep-seated, ego-driven belief that we are the sole, independent authors of all our actions and our thoughts. We believe we are the prime movers of our own lives. The psychological consequence of this mindset is severe. When we claim ultimate ownership over our victories, we inevitably force ourselves to carry the crushing weight of our defeats. Every missed deadline becomes an indictment of your competence. You buckle under the weight of holding yourself solely responsible for every outcome. Burnout and chronic anxiety grow directly from this structural flaw in the ego, the belief that we must be the ultimate controllers of every result. This title page marks the beginning of the Isa Upanishad, an ancient philosophical text that directly warns against treating the self as a mere agent of action, or karma. The commentary establishes that the real nature of the self is in direct conflict with being a factor in karma. Claiming actions as entirely your own and coveting the wealth that follows traps human consciousness in a cycle of delusion and sorrow. What if the very foundation of your ego, the belief that your mind and body are generating your success, is entirely flawed? Another ancient text, the Kena Upanishad, attempts to answer this by breaking human consciousness down to its absolute fundamental components. To completely solve the anxiety of achievement, we have to dismantle our basic assumptions about what actually powers our minds. The Kena Upanishad opens with a structural inquiry that does not go away once you hear it. By whom is the mind directed? The observer faces a paradox. Your mind can process incoming data, retrieve memories, and anticipate the future, but the mind cannot observe itself operating. It cannot be both the thing observing and the thing being observed. There is an empty space behind the instrument. Logic dictates that whatever you think is controlling your mental and sensory activity, something prior to it must be enabling that activity to occur. This excerpt details how the infinite, supreme Brahman proceeds into the conditioned world. Brahman is not a traditional deity. It is pure knowledge without content. It is the power by which the mind thinks, the mind of the mind. Brahman is the invisible ground of cognition itself. No act of cognition can turn back on its own ground and grasp it as an object, because it is the very act of grasping. To illustrate how easily human consciousness forgets this underlying source of power, the Upanishad uses a mythological parable. Following a cosmic battle, the gods, known as devas, emerge victorious. Rather than acknowledging the source of their strength, they immediately begin boasting, falsely claiming the glory entirely as their own. A mysterious spirit called a yaksha appears to test their arrogance. It targets Agni, the god of fire, challenging him to an effortless task. The yaksha places a single, delicate blade of grass before Agni, and later Vayu, the mighty god of wind. Their only objective is to burn or blow away this one piece of grass. They fail entirely. Despite exerting all their might, the grass remains untouched. They realize in that moment that their destructive power was never theirs. It was only lent to them by the ultimate source. This brings us to the Kena's famous paradox. The one who thinks they understand this supreme truth as a concept has failed, but the one who realizes it is the very act of knowing itself has arrived. Claiming individual doership over our daily abilities is as arrogant and as foolish as a fire believing it chooses to burn. We can apply this philosophy practically. The Isa Upanishad provides rules for living in the real world with this newfound understanding. This page translates the first verse of the text, offering a direct command. Protect yourself through that detachment. Do not covet anybody's wealth. There is a common misconception that detachment requires abandoning your work, retreating to a forest, and giving up on life. In fact, the translation of verse 2 states the exact opposite. By doing karma, indeed, should one wish to live here for 100 years, whereby karma may not cling to you. The instruction is to act, but to do so in a way where the ego of the action does not attach itself to you. Understanding that you are not the ultimate doer completely reframes how you engage with your work. It removes the friction from ambition. A metaphor from the BAPS spiritual tradition effectively visualizes the difference between working with ego and working with detachment. Imagine carrying a water pot on your head, acutely feeling every pound of pressure pushing down. This is the isolated burden of ego. Now imagine diving deep into the ocean. Surrounded by immense water, you feel completely weightless, immersed in a vast underlying energy. Detaching from the concept of "I am doing this" changes the felt experience of work. You move through responsibilities without the friction of personal ownership. Realizing you are an instrument of Brahman allows you to create and live powerfully while shedding the crushing weight of failure. The Upanishads suggest that true peace follows the recognition that you never acted alone. Immortality, in this sense, is the freedom found in being an instrument of the infinite.